And we're back. Well, at least I am. Some pits at work today. I had some questions pop up about some of the construction, so I thought I'd do a little Q&A real quick today. First one came from Ivan, and Ivan, I want to thank you for the question. He was asking, he or she, I assume it's a he, but we'll just go with Ivan, okay? So the question was, why don't I just have a contractor build the house? Well, that may happen, but the most obvious reason is cost. Some of these guys are saying they save up to $20,000 or $30,000 by doing the project management themselves. And going into retirement, don't plan on working ever again once we start this. $20,000, $30,000 goes a long ways in Thailand. So that's the main reason. But I also, as I've said before, I enjoy doing this stuff. I really like it. The next three are more specifically right on the construction and the design. The first one is design, mainly. And this comes from Sith. Sith, appreciate the question. Sith was wondering why I have such high walls on the main living area. Some pit wanted high ceilings in it. So in order to accommodate that, I had to push the wall height up. When I did that, I realized that I could break that roof out into three different sections. The main roof, the one over the carport, and then the shade roof around the outside, or porch, or whatever you want to call it. But once I broke that roof out into three pieces, then in order to get the angle I need, let me rephrase that, in order to get the height I need to get the correct angle on the runoff for the carport, I had to push it up even a little bit higher. So they ended up quite high. I think they're pretty close to 12 feet if I remember correctly. They're like 3.9 meters tall on the outside. But anyhow, that was the reason we ended up going with such tall walls on the main house. It does defeat the purpose of the shaded awning around the outside a little bit, because the whole point of that was overhang was to keep the sun off the house. And now with that extended wall, I'm going to lose some of that effect. But either way, I think it's turned out pretty nice. I like the looks of it, so we're going to go with it. Next question comes from James. James is a subscriber. He came over from my previous channel. For those of you that don't know, I had a channel a couple years ago on Jeep modifications and repairs. But when I shut that down, James came over to this channel, and a couple other guys did too. But for those of you that did, I really appreciate you coming over and following us. The channel was actually starting to grow pretty well. We had several hundred subscribers. But I realized that when I committed myself to go to Thailand permanently, that channel wasn't going to go anywhere, so there was no point in just carrying on and investing all my time in it. So I decided to shut that down, which I did. And James is one of them that come over. James's question is footings. How did I determine the footings, how big they need to be? Well, James, it's a non-scientific answer. I just did research and some studying, mostly with contractor videos in the United States and in Thailand. But with this one-story build, we're going to put 1 square meter pads, half a meter, actually I should get back here if I want to show you what half a meter deep. That's probably pretty close to half a meter deep. Inside of those footings, there'll be like a rebar box that will obviously get filled with concrete, but that box of concrete won't go anywhere. And we'll stand those columns right on top of that rebar box. While I'm on the subject of rebar, Thai Man asks, how do I determine rebar size? Be honest with you, same answer as the footing. I looked at several videos, and mainly the contractors, because I try not to watch videos of just handymen like me that are out doing stuff. I go to those channels where they're actual contractors that do this stuff for a living, or they sell materials. Like if you go buy siding or roofing or something, most of those people have videos on there how to put it on your house or whatever. Through my research, what I have discovered is that for the most part, everybody's saying 1/2 inch thick rebar is the most you will ever need for a residential build. I want to keep in mind again that they're putting this 1/2 inch stuff in 2-story houses. I'm only 1 story, but I'm going to go with 1/2 inch in the footings and in the stem walls. And we're going to talk about stem walls here in a minute. Because I also had a question from Tony. In a previous video, I'd said that the foundations sit on the footings. And he was just trying to visualize how that works when the footing is 1 meter underground. So let me clarify that. What we'll do is we'll build the rebar for the footing. We'll dig a hole. In this case, will be 1.5 meters deep. 1/2 meter for the footing and 1 meter for a column. We will, once we get that rebar box made, we'll set it down in the hole, up off the bottom, of course, so we don't have ground contact. But we'll set that in there. We'll form up the outside. We will then take the rebar for the entire column all the way to the top. We will tie that to the rebar inside the footing. Once we have that tied to that rebar, then we will fill that footing up with concrete. We'll let that set, that 1/2 meter deep, we'll let that set, and then we'll enclose the 4 pieces of rebar that will run all the way up through the column. We will cast that 1 meter up to ground level. We'll let that set. Once that sets, now that leaves us with 1 meter of concrete with rebar running up several meters more. But what we'll do then is we'll take and tie rebar from that column rebar to the next one over, and that's where we'll cast our foundation. A lot of people call them foundation stem walls, so for sake of conversation and keeping everybody clear, we're going to call it a stem wall. So we'll create the rebar reinforcement from column to column at just above ground level. We will then form those up and fill those with concrete. So the rebar from the footing will go through the column, cast into the stem wall, through the stem wall, out the top, and up. Once the stem walls are set, then we will encase and cast the rest of that rebar at whatever height we need those particular columns at. At the top of those columns, we will have 4 pieces of rebar sticking out. 6 to 8 inches, I don't know yet, we'll see when we get there, but 6 to 8 inches out the top. So once the column is poured and set, then we will get a steel plate, probably 3/8 inch thick, I suppose, and we will put that, we'll attach it to the rebar at whatever height we need for that roof steel. And we'll do that on top of every column that is effective for that roof. Once we get all those plates on there, then we'll cut off whatever extra rebar we have above the plate. And that plate is where we will set the steel that runs across the columns in order to start building the trusses, rafters, whatever you want to call them, that's going to support the roof. So basically that rebar is tied to the footing all the way up through the column, and then the roof steel sits right on top of that. Once again, as I said in previous videos, for the interior walls, we will also have stem walls running from column to column inside the house that the house walls will sit on. So those will all get poured probably at the same time, all the stem walls all the way around. Once those stem walls are set and we get the forms off them, then we'll go back and backfill with dirt up to a level minus the thickness of the floor. Once we get that dirt in there, get it packed down, then we'll take wire mesh or rebar or something, create a strengthening grid in there to pour the floor. Once we get that wire mesh in there, then we will pour the floor to whatever thickness, probably around 4 inches. Anywhere there's not going to be a load, probably 6 inches in the parking where the car is going to set. But that floor will actually go out over top of the stem wall. So once the floor is poured and set, then we can start stacking block to build the walls. So in a nutshell, and I know that's kind of a long explanation, but that's how the build is going to go and proceed. I'm not going to dwell on too much of the details of this build unless somebody asks questions. So if you have questions, feel free to ask, and I'll explain them as best I can. But yeah, I just want to get back to some of you guys on those questions, and those are my explanations. If anybody else has any more questions or anything, please feel free to contact me or put them in the comments down below, because I check those comments every day. But yeah, that's the plan with the build of the house and how we're going to do it. I did mention another video that on 3 sides that stem wall is actually going to get, we're going to backfill that once everything's done. We'll backfill to the top of the stem wall so that that concrete isn't exposed at all. The only place it'll be exposed is in the parking area and along the front of the house. Everything else will get backfilled. So you'll be able to just walk right off into the grass or whatever we have there. So that's what I have for today. Questions or comments, please contact me or just drop them in the comments down below. I check them every day. If you're watching and you haven't subscribed yet, surprise, it's free. All you got to do is have a YouTube account, and you can do that through your Google account. And then that YouTube account also allows you to comment on people's videos, and you can subscribe. So just hit that subscribe button right down here, and you'll be updated every time we get a new video out. The channel is growing, and I appreciate everybody that has joined us over the past couple weeks. I'll try not to make these too boring or too long. I think probably 15 to 20, 30 minutes is about comfortable for most people. Again, once we get a few more questions backlogged, I'll do another Q&A video just to kind of get everybody out there informed of what we're doing and everybody's on the same page. So, thanks for watching. Sumpit and Kenny.